I'm glad to hear. Thank you so much for being a part of what I'm doing. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get things out of it. I had somebody who was saying, "Oh, CharLee, you got to get this information out. You got to get that." I get that all the time, and I keep telling people, that's for somebody else. That's for like my friend Mike Cook, and those kind of folks who are doing those kind of shows. It's basically a news kind of show, news talk show. I just do interviews. That's what I like to do. I love to hear somebody else tell me about what's going on and educate me as well. I haven't had very many guests as good at that as Arthur Schaper, and he's involved with an organization that I just am enamored with. I think they're amazing. That's massresistance.org. Who? What is that? Well, if you haven't been watching any of my shows with Arthur, we're going to get even more in depth with that, and the legal battles that they're presenting, and the information that they're getting out is all about God, family, country, but digging deeper than that, really focusing on God, God's will, God's godly civics. Like that one pastor I had on talked about godly civics. That's it. Bible-based decisions on how we're going to vote, how we should vote, bringing the Lord into things, his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven, as Jesus told us to pray. I pray for that as well. How is that going to be entailed? How is that going to happen? You can get an idea by reading the book of Revelation, which I believe we're in the middle. We're in that, maybe in the beginning of that. We can argue that point back and forth all day, but it's happening. It's happening. And I want to be on the right side. So I ask a lot of questions. I want to know too. I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. I'm just a good old boy from Bakersfield. I don't know about a lot of these things. I try and keep up on stuff, but sometimes it's just too much. So getting Arthur Schaper on the show and having him help me get narrow focused on these different topics that are vitally important to the future of our United States of America. And as our country goes, so goes the rest of the world. I really believe that, which is why they want to take America down. They, the left, doing the devil's work just as quickly as possible, for his time is short. That's the enemy we're fighting. That's the enemy I'm praying against. That's the enemy I'm putting guests on who have that same mindset. So thanks for coming along for the ride. I want to get him into the mix. There's things to talk about. What's happening in the Supreme Court on Do Not Talk. Are you ready? Hit it. Yeah! Buddy boy, what's going on?
Things are good. We're kicking things into gear with mass resistance. We've hit the ground running this year. We had a big fundraising haul. Very grateful for that. And now we're moving into many state legislatures. And again, thank you again for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Glad to talk about the work that I do for Mass Resistance, international pro-family group that makes the difference.
Let's talk about recent decisions and pondering whether they should even take on things that are being presented when it comes to a reversal. We were able to get Roe v. Wade reversed, which was a catastrophic event in the early 70s. And churches were, for the most part, Christian churches were silent on it, which imagine if the Christian vote and voice would have risen up in opposition to this whole Roe v. Wade debacle, where the Supreme Court said, yeah, you can't make abortion illegal. So the media took that immediately and ran with it and said, oh, abortion's legal. Supreme Court said so. And then it was like they unleashed Planned Parenthood on the world. And most of us were saying, well, I was just a kid when this happened. But I remember, people were saying that, as long as my dollars don't pay for it. I don't want my tax dollars paying for abortion. Well, how long did that last before our tax dollars were paying for abortion? Our federal tax dollars were going to Planned Parenthood to see their worldwide growth to the tune of almost $500 million a year. We were giving to Planned Parenthood.
Yep.
But that was reversed. Who would have ever thought that would happen? That was reversed. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, current Supreme Court, for actually bringing that back, looking at it and saying, that wasn't right. That was a bad decision. We really had no place making that decision as the Supreme Court. We're rescinding that.
I was so glad that day. That was a miracle. 49 years this country has labored under that abusive, horrific decision, Roe versus Wade. When I was attending Catholic churches, I would participate in a March for Life. It was in January. I believe that was the same month that Roe versus Wade was imposed. We have to say that imposed. This is not what people chose. The bluest of states and the reddest, they had clear laws outlawing abortion, the murder of the unborn. And I would march in those processions. I was born in 1980. And so they would have an individual from every year from 1973 until that year carry a rose to commemorate every life that had been aborted. So it's a great victory that horrific decision was overturned. There is a larger fight that's now on the horizon to push for full abolition and for full recriminalization for the killing of a child. I was watching a key hearing in South Dakota it was a couple weeks ago. They introduced a bill that would make it a crime for anybody to kill a child. This might sound harsh, but when a mother gets an abortion, that is a murder. We have to call it what it is. And you have a lot of weepy pro-family groups and pregnancy centers and counseling groups that are saying, oh, no, we shouldn't criminalize the mother. They were pushed into it. They were forced into it. They were induced into it. I don't receive that, because abortion would have never been an option for many women if it was a criminal statute for the mother. Many women, the funny thing, the bill died in committee. This is South Dakota, which is this super red state. It's like hypermajority Republican. And you had a majority of Republicans on the key committee. They just voted it down. They killed it because nobody wants to be stigmatized with, oh, you're criminalizing mothers. That is an absolutely ridiculous statement. We have to protect life. Now, this sentiment is the key thing I want to build on, which is we have to go for everything. The Supreme Court got the ball rolling. Abortion was brought back to the states. It wasn't outlawed. I wish the Supreme Court had done that, because the Constitution,
republic is designed. The states
it's defined. The federal government is in place to defend life. So the Supreme Court would have been well within its reason to say, not only do we reverse, but you cannot kill your babies. So, okay, it is what it is. Roe versus Wade is gone, but it's this thing that we have to go all the way to restoring the culture. Now, where mass resistance is stepping in, we want to fight the fight when it comes to same-sex marriage. This is an abomination that was imposed upon the United States in 2015. The Supreme Court case was Obergefell v. Hodges. It was two gay men from Ohio who were pretending to be married or insisted on engaging in that lie and in that destructive lie to boot. And they sued all the way to the United States Supreme Court. There were a couple of other cases attached to it. And we know that then it was a liberal Supreme Court with Justice Kennedy always playing the wobbler vote, even though he was appointed by a Republican and a conservative, Ronald Reagan. So he was the tie-breaking vote that said it's a violation of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, not to allow two men or two women to marry. This is nonsense, like trying to create a right to kill your baby that they did with Roe v. Wade in 1973. That decision was Obergefell was just as egregiously wrong. And so mass resistance, we've been committed to overturning that decision and undermining the fraud that anybody can marry anybody. This is a patently destructive agenda. Everybody said 10, 11 years ago, well, this is just about two adults. Love is love. They just want to be able to celebrate their relationship. Why can't they have that? And look where we are now. Children are being taught about homosexual sex, transgenderism, sodomy, all kinds of sexual degeneracies, BDSM. It's in the schools. It's in the libraries. All these parents who are protesting against school boards and library boards for having pornographic materials, which mass resistance has also been fighting, by the way. All of this has happened because they normalized the notion that two men could abuse each other and call it a marriage, that two women could abuse each other and call it a marriage. A lot of pro-family groups, it's only recently, I'll talk about that other segment later, but by and large, pro-family groups were not going to the core of the problem, which is that they redefined marriage to normalize homosexuality. We can't normalize something that's destructive. So it actually started as far back as late 2023. I was in touch with some legislators throughout the country. I drafted a resolution against Obergefell v. Hodges. I drew upon the dissenting opinions offered by Scalia, Alito, Thomas, and even John Roberts. Those were the four who dissented in that opinion. We shopped it around. One legislator was open to it. Then came 2024, and she said, I can't do it this year. The time isn't right. That same legislator came back to me at the end of 2024. And I think that Trump's success was a part of that. I really do. There was a real resurgence of we can shape the culture again. Trump is back in the White House. So we started in Idaho. We had State Rep Heather Scott. She introduced our resolution. And in North Dakota, we had a state rep named Bill Twite. And we had worked with these legislators in the past. They had either passed or supported bills to ban the sex mutilation of minors, to keep obscene books away from kids, to put an end to creepy men going into women's sports and spaces. These legislators had been on the forefront of those fights. And so we would go to these bold conservative legislators in the different states and say, would you like to go to the next level? Let's get a resolution where the state legislature calls upon the Supreme Court to review and reverse Obergefell. And they were willing to do it. We got the ball rolling in 2025. We had filed resolutions in Idaho, North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota. We have filed resolutions in Iowa, Michigan, and Mississippi. Going into this year, we are expanding the map. We are looking at Louisiana, South Carolina. We're looking at Georgia. We tried Florida. The deadline passed. We're going to try again next year. Different states, they have very temperamental deadlines. It's interesting. Some states you have to file a bill before the legislative session even starts. So we do the best we can. We're trying to build relationships with different legislators. I've talked to people in West Virginia, in Pennsylvania. And I mentioned Michigan before. Michigan and Iowa are special because you can file a bill in 25 and it will carry into 26, the whole session. It lasts the whole year. So we've got those two resolutions. Iowa is very interesting. We are reaching out to big time pro-family groups in that state. We were talking about the Family Leader, the Iowa Baptist, the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition. I've been able to get in touch with these groups. And they said to me, we didn't even know about this resolution. And so they signed on and they've endorsed it. Now, getting groups on the outside is one thing. Our next step is we have activists in these states going to the legislatures, forming the relationships, pushing on the representatives. You've got to move this. And what is so fascinating about this, going back to last year, we got so much coverage. New York Times, Washington Post, we had Christian Science Monitor, we had Yahoo, USA Today. All of these news sites, they reached out to us. They interviewed us. They said, you guys are starting this fight. Why? Because that's what mass resistance has been committed to. We want to go to the core of the problem. We want to correct what has been wronged or what has been distorted. And you got to do that by restoring the natural definition of family. So that's been a big project. That's been something we've been heavily invested in just the last 2 months already, building on all the stuff we started last year.
My career in the media, I've got a long history of saying and doing controversial things. Before I got saved, it was always to get higher ratings and to push the envelope. After I got saved, it was to promote Christ and God's kingdom. I've never experienced such resistance and pushback and hate as I have from taking those kind of stands than I ever did before. And the worst one, the one where I experienced my first time getting death threats, boycotts of the radio station, television station, and other station that was in the building. That was when I worked for ABC in San Francisco, California. The pushback was amazing, and that was merely because I said on the air that how ridiculous it was that the San Francisco City Council had made it a law that in the city limits that you could not send some dude who showed up to work cross-dressing as a woman. You couldn't send him home and go, dress like a man. You're working for us. Yeah, we don't want that here in our business. They made that illegal. I spoke out against that, and the pushback was so fast and so violent and so dramatic. Thank God at the time, management at ABC stuck by me because they were trying so hard to get me fired.
Wow.
And to get me shut up and shut down. I don't think I would even get that support from ABC now. Certainly not now that it's owned by Disney, and Disney is all on board with that crap. Obviously.
It's interesting you bring up Disney because Orlando usually had gay days, which is so creepy just to have, you have these adult gay men with all of their problems, and they're going to Orlando, which is supposed to be a family-friendly venue. Shame on Disney. They do this in lots of their venues. But this year, they lost all their corporate sponsors. Nobody wanted to support them. So that is a huge win. And I give President Trump a lot of credit. He's restored the culture. He's pushed back on this. He's undermined the preeminence of the whole wokeness agenda that LGBT completely coasted upon to get as far as it did. So I think he's been a key part of that. Not totally thrilled with having gay homosexual members in his cabinet or in his inner circle. I do think, however, that they ironically are undermining the whole gay cause. Nobody could tell that Scott Bessent is gay, and he's undermined just about every gay cause. So I think that's kind of interesting. Rick Grenell is the only one I really don't like. He fired a Christian from the Kennedy Center simply for having a stance on natural or biblical marriage. I think Mr. Grenell needs to be shown the exit. He's the big
you and me both. But these politicians and the media, because of what happened to me, not saying that it was just me, but just because of the way they so violently react to anybody who opposes them, the homosexual mafia, the homo mafia, as I call them, they're scared to death to stand up and do these kind of things and say, this isn't right. This is completely wrong. They're scared to death. But you have found some elected representatives who have said, yeah, we agree with you, and we're going, and we'll help make this happen.
Yes,
great news.
I'd love to be able to spotlight them right now. State Rep Heather Scott of Idaho. I'll just repeat, Rep Bill Twite of North Dakota. We had State Senator Bob Phelan of Minnesota. Excuse me, not Minnesota, Montana. So he filed it last year. Montana only meets once every 2 years. They're on recess. They'll come back in January next year. And he told me, I'm going to file this again. I'm totally committed to this. He is a very bold legislator in Montana, very unpopular. They killed all of his legislation last year. The rhinos were so angry that he was willing to start this discussion. I got to give a shout out to State Rep Tony Randolph of South Dakota. He has carried our resolution 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. And he is the only black man in the South Dakota state legislature. So take that, Democrats. Everybody's always complaining about diversity. Nobody, not anybody, the NAACP, there was no black interest group in the country that celebrated State Rep Randolph when he was elected to the South Dakota legislature, because he's not the right kind of black person. Thinks for himself, speaks up for biblical truth. He would tell me stories about how he was attacked by LGBT activists in the South Dakota legislature for taking a stand for pro-family values. And they would shame him and say, well, you're black. You should understand the oppression. You should understand what it's like to have your civil rights violated. They would try to shame him because of his skin color. It's pretty racist, isn't it? That's the kind of game they play. But he would push back on them and say, I was born this way. I was born black. You were not born that way. You're not born gay. You're not born trans. And he was more than happy to carry our resolution. The true story, I submitted our resolution to there's a South Dakota Freedom Caucus group, and I submitted it to the leadership, and I said, we would like someone to carry this. And Senator State Rep Randolph wrote to me, and he said, I'll carry it. I didn't reach out to him. He reached out to me and said, I'll carry it. And so he's done it 2 years in a row. And this, briefly talking about South Dakota, I told you how the South Dakota, it was the House Health and Services Committee. They killed the abolition of abortion bill. Well, they've killed our resolution against Obergefell, not once, but twice. It is a travesty. This is a state that is super red, hyper red. I mean, it is so red. Okay, it's the House Judiciary Committee that was listening to our resolution. Okay, in the past, it had one Democrat. Well, this year, that one Democrat became a Republican. So there are no Democrats on this committee. The Democratic Party is dead in South Dakota. There is no two ways about it. they literally, out of like 60 seats, there's only 5 that are Democrats. And then you go to the state Senate, only 2 are Democrats. And yet you have a large number of these Republicans. They still act like Democrats. They still act like liberals. And here's the point that I really want to double down on. Okay, the same South Dakota legislature this year, they passed a resolution calling upon the people of South Dakota to pray to God for guidance and redemption. So it was like a prayer, a public prayer. So that's a big profession of faith, right? Yeah. And it was a pretty good number of Republicans that voted along with it. And yet this is the legislature, Republican, House and Senate, they voted for it. It passed. But when it comes to the biblical truth of marriage as one man and one woman, they won't vote for it. This is a problem. This was one of my latest articles on American Thinker. It got a lot of traction. It got a lot of attention. I got a lawyer from Florida who wrote to me and offered to help get the resolution introduced in Florida for next year. This is an outrage. This is a hypocrisy that voters across the country, especially the Christian, evangelical, the Catholic, whatever your denomination, you vote in your state elections. Your legislators will talk the talk. They'll talk the gospel. They'll say Jesus. They'll say Christ is king. They'll open their campaigns in prayer. They'll have Bible verses on their campaign literature, but they don't vote the values in the legislature. And this is a big exhortation I give to everybody. If you're in a red state, you need to make sure that if your guy is swearing up and down on the Bible, he needs to be voting that way. This is a stunning challenge that we've run into, that mass resistance has run into. I was talking about legislators. I wanted to give them the shout outs for carrying this resolution on behalf of us and our activists. Let me talk about Michigan. Rep. Joshua Schreiber, a young guy. Okay. America first. I mean, this guy is like Gen Z, hardcore conservative. And he took our resolution and he even did a press conference for it. This was early last year. Oh my gosh, the Democrats had a total meltdown. The state rep's office, I heard, was getting thousands of phone calls bashing him for introducing this. And I need to remind the audience, this is a resolution, okay? This isn't even a bill to change a law to impose a criminal penalty. It's a statement of value from the legislature to the court. That's all it is. And they're already going crazy. LGBT activists all over the country have just lost their minds. But Josh Schreiber was not afraid of the fight. His staff were not afraid of the fight. Now, the Republicans, they have the Michigan House again. And they took his resolution and they dumped it in a committee that's usually the dustbin for bills they don't like.
That's what
they did.
They do.
And it gets worse. So they did that in February of last year. Now we fast forward to November, just a few months ago. The same state rep, Josh Schreiber, he's a Catholic. He introduced a resolution recognizing Christ the King. Wow, that is bold stuff. Christ the King. Can you imagine a legislature stating Christ the King? We're celebrating Christ the King in conjunction with the Christ the King celebration in November. Well, the Michigan House, they passed it. So they can say Christ is King, but they won't say marriage is one man, one woman. What is going on here? So our activists, we're starting to call pro-family groups. I just called one of the Catholic groups in Michigan. I'm hoping to hear back from them. We want to raise heaven. I won't say raise hell, but we need to start pushing on this. You say Christ is King, but you can't say that marriage is one man and one woman. What is going on here? This is not acceptable. So all props up for Josh Schreiber. I respect him. He's carried this, but it's the colleagues. Look at the cowardice and look at the hypocrisy here.
It is.
This is what we're dealing with what mass resistance is running into. And I can add another state. Let me talk about Oklahoma. I'm sure your conservative audience, they've heard of Senator Dusty Devers. He is a bold, powerful, passionate, outspoken pastor. And he got elected in a special election. I think this was 2 years ago. And he offered to take our resolution. He loved it. He says, I'm going to carry it. He was interviewed by the Family Research Council. Loved it. He says, I am pushing this. And get this, he was able to get 25 co-sponsors, state senators. Now, Oklahoma, there are 48 state senators. You do the math. 25 is a majority. A majority of state senators support this resolution. And the leadership won't give it a floor vote. This is what we're dealing with in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is the buckle on the Bible Belt. I mean, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida. We could talk about the biblical culture that is profound throughout the South, and Oklahoma is the buckle right on top of it. That is the home state of our beloved Kenneth Hagin, you'll have what you say, Kenneth Hagin Ministries, right there in Borough Canera, Oklahoma. A lot of pastors looked up to Kenneth Hagin. That's right there in Oklahoma, right? And this same state legislature, here we go again, the Oklahoma House, it was last year, they passed a resolution, Christ is King. Literally passed a resolution, Christ is King. We recognize the sovereignty of Christ and that the Christian religion is the truth. They can say this, but they won't pass a resolution that says marriage is one man and one woman. This is not acceptable. We must expect more from our legislators across the country. And this is the wake-up call, and mass resistance is right in the center of this. So there's that. And I talked about Iowa. We've got Senator Sandy Salmon, just like the fish. She took our resolution. This year, we're now working on pro-family groups and legislators to assist us. I won't name names, but I'm in touch with a former congressman, and he's been assisting us too. I won't say anything else. So we've got a lot of support behind the scenes here, but this is the resistance. So mass resistance, we're facing the secular, corrupt, pro-LGBT resistance, and we're facing this from other Republicans. This is the kind of
frustrating thing. That's the frustrating thing. And the homosexual mafia is just a minute little minority of the population. Yeah. And overwhelmingly, the population of the United States of America believes that marriage should be between just a man and a woman.
I agree with you.
They're all scared to death to say anything about it. And we've bought into this whole love is love crap. My answer to that is always the same. Oh, really? Where are you going to draw the line? Yes. Love is love if it's like a dude and his donkey. Love is love if it's a dude and his child. Is that still love is love? Is that okay too? Well, in their book, yes, they're pushing for that as well. Even in California, they passed that law that there's that 10-year limit. You could be a 23-year-old and you could knock up a 13-year-old.
24 and 14. That's the timeline. 24 and 14.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Senate Bill 145. I know we fought that as much as we could. It passed by that slimmest of margin, 41 votes in the state assembly. The state Senate was a slightly broader margin. There are a bunch of sickos.
California.
And, as much as I'm not a big fan of State Assemblyman Carl DeMaio because of his lifestyle, I don't endorse that. That is wrong. And yet he has been the only one, even in the last 6 months. He mentioned Senate Bill 145 and he said, we must repeal this. We must repeal it. I will give him props. Fine. I just pray that he would get out of the lifestyle too. But, I'll take whatever I can get. God can use the worst to do the first with any of us. So that's a law that absolutely needs to be repealed. That kind of fighting spirit is what we need more of in Sacramento. Fingers crossed. We have 2 Republicans in the top 2. Republican ticket will get pulled up and we'll be able to kind of claw back the legislature a little bit. I'm always the optimist. I respect your cynicism though. I really do. I get where you're coming from, CharLee. Voter fraud. My God, Nick Shirley showed up and just exposed how easy it is to register to vote in our state. The answer will always be, we just have to outvote them. And you know what? This might be the year. We'll see. But at any rate, mass resistance, we're committed. Blue states are red. Michigan is still kind of a purple state, and Shriver was willing to take our resolution. We've reached out to Pennsylvania. We've got a staffer who's trying to find somebody who will carry it. It's another year-round legislature like Michigan and California. We have people in Maryland. Maryland is horribly blue. My God, it's so bad. The river stinks. The sewers have all flooded the Potomac. And this is horrible. This is the cradle of our republic, and they're treating it like a dump, like a toilet. That's how bad it is in Maryland. And it all flows down from the moral sewage, the moral collapse that has come out of Annapolis. But we're even going to fight there. We want our resolution against Obergefell in blue states and red. It's time to take a stand. They must overturn this. Now, here's mass resistance. We started this. We stepped up early and said, we're going to go to the belly of the beast. We're going to go to the heart of the matter. Now, in the last 2 months, another group has emerged on the scene called Greater Than. There's been some reports on it, some articles. Katie Faust and a coalition of other pro-family groups and conservative activists like Michael Knowles and Daily Signal, the Family Research Council. One of the group members suggested that we reach out and join this. They want Greater Than. Children's needs are greater than adults' desires. That's the idea. They want to end same-sex marriage with the basis on the needs of the child. Now, mass resistance, one of the members considered and asked us, he said, why don't you join too? And you know what? Our president, Brian Kammacher, he said, no. Now, does it sound, are we trying to be arbitrary, out of line? Are we trying to be marginal? Are we trying to be difficult? No, there's a reason why. And we need to talk about this. This is something we're going to be making. I've been getting so many people calling me, aren't you going to join Greater Than? Have you heard about Greater Than? So here's the problem. The Greater Than movement, which just initiated, they are proceeding from this basis. We need to focus on the needs of the child. Every child needs a mom and a dad. Absolutely true. And that is an underreported reality. But we have the research now after 10 years. I agree with it. In fact, it was a profound point. I've talked to Katie Faust personally, and I said, thank you. This is a great point. But Brian then stepped in. And Brian knows some of the legal channels that were involved in the Obergefell decision when they were defending natural marriage, when they were defending the state amendments, which defined marriage as one man and one woman. And what happens is you had some of the legal staff, they were saying to the public, or they were saying to their supporters, we are going to focus on every kid needs a mom and a dad. That was going to be their arguments before the Supreme Court. And not just because of the truthful aspect, not just because of the emotional pull, but because, in their words, they didn't want to seem homophobic. They were worried about looking bad. They were worried about seeing hostile or hateful or harmful to a certain population. And what happened? It failed. As we know, as we are here today, Obergefell struck down all of the natural definitions of marriage in all of those state constitutions. It failed. If you want to fight this same-sex marriage fight, you have to go to the core of the problem. You have to be able to state homosexuality is a wrong. It's a perversion. It's a response to trauma. It's not an identity. And this is what pro-family groups routinely want to avoid. They don't want to have this discussion. Every kid needs a mom and a dad. But then you can open up the discussion. Well, not every kid has a mom and a dad. Is it the end of the world for them? No. Not every kid knows their mom and their dad. Is it the end of the world? No. You have to get to the heart of the matter, because the whole gay marriage movement, it wasn't even about marriage. It was about, I have a right to be attracted to the same sex, and you have to celebrate it. You have to be okay with it. That's what the agenda really is. It is a Stalinist tyranny. Yes. And I have spoken, I can speak from personal experience. Hermosa Beach, California. I was at one of the town halls for the creepy congressman, Henry Waxman. Unfortunately, he became my congressman for 2 years. Horrible Henry Waxman. And I ran into a gay activist at that town hall. In those days, I was Mr. Live and Let Live. I wasn't involved with master resistance. I didn't even think twice about marriage and family. And I'm talking to this guy, and he's like, he talked about how he was gay and he was, in for gay rights and stuff. And it was a civil conversation. And I used a very simple word. I said, well, let's just go with tolerance. Okay, you be married to whatever and just leave me alone. I've never forgotten this. Maybe I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again. He literally said, no, I will not accept tolerance. You have to accept me.
There it is.
You have to accept me. That's what he said. And that's what all of this is. It's not just about marriage. It's about you have to accept a lie, a destructive lie, a public order perversion, and you have to bear the consequences. And if you don't, you get canceled, you get shut down, you go to jail. Look at Kim Davis. When she didn't issue those fake marriage licenses to those false couples, she went to jail. You could talk to Barron L. Stutzman. You can talk to the New Mexico photographers. You can talk to, in your own hometown of Bakersfield, there's a baker there. She was dragged through the courts over the whole human rights issue because she wouldn't bake a cake for the fake wedding. That's what it comes down to, folks. It's a Stalinist tyranny shoved down our throats. And, we're past the point where can't you have your marriage and let me have my life? No, it's over. The whole civil rights schematic has ruined our constitutional net order so that it's forced people. If there's disparate impact, if there's a hint of discrimination, you have to change, you have to pay the fine, you have to adjust. No, The answer is we have to pull the plug on all of this. We have to go back to a natural order. And mass resistance, we stress that. We're grateful for the religious sentiment of all of these legislators, of all of the activists, but we've always based our argument on natural law, natural order, facts, evidence, research, reality. There's no gay gene. You don't get to redefine marriage. You don't get to undermine society. And you certainly don't get to shove it in my face. Like what happened to you, CharLee, at the ABC station when you simply stated, what is this? And what you just talked about. I mean, the businesses had to allow the creepy man to wear a dress. They had to put up with that. You see, it's total Stalinist tyranny. And this is all because homosexuals said, I want to marry the man I love, or I want to marry the woman I love. This isn't love is love. It's we love and you got to live with it. It's we love or you die. That's really what it is. And this is
exactly right. And in California, they already had all the same rights as a married couple. It was considered a union. They recognized the union, but they never used the word marriage. Why was it so important for them to call it marriage? Well, I think that was a direct attack against God's church, God's people, and God's will and his word. That was a direct attack against the Lord is what that was all about. And now look what we have, all the confusions about who's a husband, who's a wife, who's a man, who's a woman, who's this, who's that. It's just, and as Arthur brought up earlier, some of the examples of how far they have pushed it in such a short period of time shows you how intricately important that is, that we don't have that decision remain in the Supreme Court that, gay marriage, homosexual marriage, it's okay. You go ahead and do what you want. No, we cannot take that stand. As a nation, we have to take a stand for what is right, or we will fall. We will fall.
I want to make this appeal to every audience member. If you're Jew, Hindu, Muslim, if you're agnostic, it still affects you. Because I've met people who are, lack of a better term, I met a guy from Nevada by way of Michigan, and I guess he was a civic religionist, or like a deist. He wasn't a Christian, didn't care for, biblical truth, but it really came down to, you don't have a right to, sodomy is a violation of the natural order, and you don't have a right to make me okay with it, because it's not okay. I remember there was that Huffington Post. They want to do their, gay propaganda. So what they do is they took a bunch of kids and they put them in front of a laptop and they show them, two men or two women proposing to each other to get married. And so you've got like the adolescents, they care about what other people think. They don't want to be cold phobic. Adolescents are very sensitive to the opinions of others, right? And so they're like, oh, I think this is cool, or it's okay, or whatever. But then they got the 5-year-old. The little 5-year-old, he's like, that's disgusting. The little kid's like, that's nasty. The little kid had no inhibitions. There's something like, that's not right. And we're being told that this is okay. I don't know if I've shared this story, but it's worth sharing regardless. Brian, the president of Mass Resistance, he grew up in Venice, Florida. Okay. So he was there in Venice, Florida, at Venice High School when integration occurred. So the black and white kids had been going to different schools. They all started going to the same school. It didn't require presentations. It didn't require conventions or convocations or trainings. It was just done because human nature, human societies of different skin colors had been interacting with each other for centuries, for millennia. In fact, it was abnormal to separate the groups. That's what was crazy and silly. But when it comes to normalizing homosexuality, gay kids, gay adults, gay teacher, whatever, gay straight alliance club, whatever, it requires all of this forceful indoctrination and training and presentations and seminars. Why is this? Because it's not normal. There's a recognition within human nature when it puts aside all of the glitz and all of the concerns about public sentiment. People just go, this ain't right. It's not normal. And this is what we've been told or forced into believing otherwise. And now people are terrified to say something because they'll be attacked, pilloried, lose their job like what they tried to do to you. Or, like the business owners that get sued into oblivion, or the people who face jail time or fines for simply telling the truth and refusing to celebrate a lie. We've got to turn the tables on this. We've got to reverse it. And Mass Resistance is committed to getting this ball rolling with our resolution. And now, like with what happened in South Dakota, we're doubling down, going after these cowardly legislators who won't stand for biblical truth, won't stand for natural law, won't uphold the Constitution, that is based on natural law, where no authority is given to the federal government to define, let alone redefine marriage. We cannot settle for these half measures and this cowardice.
Amen. The leader of mass resistance, the one who started it all, Brian, what's his last name?
Brian Kamiker. Yes.
Man, it'd be fun to get him on with you and me sometime in the future. I'd love to meet him.
It's really something. I can share another story if you don't mind. I mean, he lived in Newton, Massachusetts. So he was born in Minnesota, Florida. Then he's now in Massachusetts. Mass resistance is in Massachusetts. Mass resistance started actually in Newton, Massachusetts, and that was a pretty left-wing town even for the early 1990s. But even in that city, they were able to take a stand against non-discrimination ordinances. They were able to repeal those. That was Barney Frank's town. Okay, we're talking creepy gay Congressman Barney Frank. He was from Newton. Yeah. And so he was running things, and Brian and the parents and the community he worked with, they were able to push back on all the gay stuff. This was in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Of course, with all the perverse Supreme Court decisions that were shoved down, that is what frustrated a lot of activists. We have to think outside the box, or we have to start rejecting the Supreme Court decision. That's what mass resistance is trying to do. This is what we're trying to push. I believe in our last video, you shared with the public our documentary. And I got to give it another plug. What gay marriage did to Massachusetts, all of the fallout, all of the moral collapse, all of the public order disarray, which occurred because of Oberga. That was the Goodridge Amendment. That was the Massachusetts decision. The first state that imposed the travesty of same-sex marriage, that was in Massachusetts before the rest of the country was forced into it by Obergefell. And it was just a matter of 5 years. 2008, Brian was interviewed by Megyn Kelly before she turned into Grandma Groiber. She was interviewing him on Fox News, and they were mutilating kids. Even then, transgenderism was going on in Massachusetts as early as 2007. Okay, that's how long. This is the result. 4 years after same-sex marriage was imposed on the Commonwealth, they started mutilating kids. They started pushing the gay books on the kids. They started arresting parents who objected to their children being subjected to that garbage. We see it now happening all over the country. Folks, wake up. Join mass resistance. If you're in a state that I haven't listed yet, we don't have your resolution there. I'm working on Arkansas. I'm working on Kansas. I'm working on Missouri. I'm working on every state I can, blue or red. We want to get this going. We have got to take a stand against this perverse same-sex marriage nonsense. You mentioned a point earlier, CharLee. I appreciate it. Yes, majority of Republicans are now waking up. There was a point, majority of Republicans were okay with same-sex marriage. Those numbers are starting to collapse again. This is very important. And how this continues is we have to tell the truth. We have to tell the whole truth, not just about the needs of the kids. It does matter. I'm not diminishing that. Kids do need a mom and a dad, no doubt. But we have to be able to tell the truth about, hey, two men shacking up and hooking up is undermining the rest of our society. It's an attack on the church. It's an attack on the foundations of our culture. It's an attack on what's decent and true. And we've got a big fight ahead of us, because we got a lot of Republicans, supposedly the pro-family party, who have caved on this or don't want to talk about it. And as I shared with you, we've got legislatures that have voted down our resolution, refusing to even give it a hearing. This is a problem. We can't tolerate it.
When did the term homophobic become such a cuss word that people completely shy away like a turtle pulling its head into its shell anytime somebody says, well, you're a homophobe? Phobic, fear of homosexuality. They say it's a fear of, well, you have your own homosexual tendencies, you're afraid of them. But they also listen.
Now, see, that's interesting. I've had that card pulled, and I simply go, oh, so you acknowledge it's a perversion, and that just shuts them down. So you acknowledge it's a perversion.
I love that.
Shuts them down. They don't.
I always say, no, I'm not afraid. No, I'm not afraid.
No, it's not a phobia. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I mean,
the only thing I am afraid of, the only fear I have of the homosexual lifestyle and the promotion of it is the effect on children.
That is legitimate. I don't diminish that for one second.
Every time. Yes, I am afraid of the homosexual community just because of what they do to children and deem it to be okay.
And here's the thing, it's inseparable. Because you're going to have some homosexual activists, they want to say, well, we don't want to hurt the kids. We don't believe pedophilia is wrong, even though there's not a lot of strength behind that opposition or that disgust. That's very disturbing in itself. But the fact is, the whole agenda is about the kids. It really is. Karl Ulrich, the first modern gay rights activist in Germany, advocated for sex with 14-year-olds. Senate Bill 145, he would have written that law because that was tailored for people like him. Scott Wiener, Mr. Groomer-in-Chief in San Francisco, he's the one who introduced the bill, and it was clearly, explicitly advertised as an LGBT bill. What is this? That they're trying to protect 24-year-olds who have sex with 14-year-olds and help them avoid the sex offender registry. That tells you everything.
And if they are busted for it, it's only a misdemeanor, no longer a felony. That's the law in California now.
It is. It's, and that the 20, and I was listening to another commentator. She was a Democrat. She's kind of moved to every Democrat who isn't crazy has basically moved to the right because all the Democrats have gone so woke. So you stay in the center, but you look like a right-wing nut job compared to the rest of them. We got to be careful of that, by the way. But she was even pointing out that there was something in the law. I have to look at it again, but she gave the impression that any adult could have sex with a minor.
Yeah.
And avoid the registry. The judge has this discretion. This is insane. This is so evil. And it's advertised in an LGBT issue. Why is it that you see this preponderance of adults, LGBT, having sex with or seeking sex with children? This is this is how evil it is, but you can't run away from it. And here's the thing, they bluntly trumpet their intentions. We have to bluntly say, you're a predator, you're a pedo. Chief Groomer, before Marjorie Taylor Greene went to the dark side, she called Weenie Wiener a communist groomer. Yes, he is. He is a groomer. When I saw him at that ICE protest with the kids in San Francisco, I was scared for the kids. I said, get those kids away from him. He's a creep. I don't care. Screw me. You're a creep. You're a predator. You're a pedo. Stay away from the kids. You creep.
Oh, yeah. And who he's talking about is, if you don't know, California Senator Scott Wiener is who he's talking about.
Senator Wiener.
I don't want to assume everybody knows who that clown is, but there's three things I want to ask you to do.
Can I just let me scoop in? I want to just scoop in one last thing about the parents versus the kids, and this is about pedophilia at its core.
Yeah, please.
Georgia. I had one of our activists in Atlanta, in Arizona, was following this very closely, and he kept asking me for updates. You had a gay couple, two men, in Georgia, in one of the suburbs outside of Atlanta. They were presented as like the ideal gay couple to show, hey, look, two men can be foster parents. They can adopt kids. They can provide these poor children a stable home.
Oh, yeah.
And those two guys, they not only repeatedly raped and abused the boys, but they trafficked the kids for sexual favors. They videotaped. This stuff can't be normal, folks. We can't keep allowing this. We can't be afraid of being labeled something because it is hurting the kids. You see, I'm not disrespecting the motive to care about the kids, but you see, you got to have the core courage. It's a perversion for two men to abuse each other. And it's inevitably about abusing kids. See, they're not having that discussion either. Greater Than is not talking about that. They're not talking about that either. They're just talking about the kids need a mom and a dad because they need the development. That's all true. But we have to have the courage to see the most incendiary truths about this. This is an absolute evil, destructive agenda. Allowing the destruction of marriage has unleashed anarchy, and we have to say no. Now, you got three things you want to ask me, and I'm going to shut up and let you ask them.
No, not you. Not you. I'm not speaking for Arthur. I'm talking directly to you watching.
Okay.
There's three things I want to ask you to do. One is to pray against evil. Pray against this evil that is cast out of this nation. Pray like David. He said, Lord, please save them. But if not, bring them down, destroy them. So pray against this evil. The other one is some of the names that Arthur mentioned earlier, all of them who are trying to make this happen, trying to actually turn this around. Pray for their safety, because I know how I was attacked. I can only imagine what's happening to them. So pray for their safety, pray for the safety of their families, pray for the safety of their staff, their administration, and pray for Arthur. Pray for his safety. Pray that he is effective for the Lord. Pray for his health, his good health, his strength. Pray for massresistance.org. Pray for this man, Brian, and do it fervently and often and bring them to the Lord. He will bless that. He will bless these people with effectiveness. That's what we need more than anything. Those are the things I ask you to do. Please take this to our Father in heaven and pray for these people. Thank you for what you're doing. How do we find out more? How do we get involved?
I can't thank you enough. Visit our website right away. I'm urging every one of you, especially if you're in a state I didn't mention. South Carolina, I'll mention North Carolina, South Carolina. We want to move this. Arizona, we've got an inroad, maybe. Fingers crossed. Arizona's in a tough place right now. It's gotten a little better, but remember, Republican legislatures are usually a starting point. But I've told everybody, we face setbacks even there. Visit our website, massresistance.org. We have a number of links. You can sign up, want to get involved. We also need your donations to support our efforts as we grow. We're going to be in need very soon of another staffer to help us build and be robust in this fight. So that's key. I have no problem. I'm putting my information out there to everybody. Arthur@massresistance.org. That's my direct email. Let's just keep it simple. That way you can write whatever you want. Get it to me. We get negative people. I want to put this out there. We have trolls. We have haters. We have LGBT who attack us. And you know what we do? I want to give you this story to show how we're successful against the enemy, that your prayers work. We have trolls. We have harassment. Massachusetts, one of the few good things, they have really strict laws when it comes to harassment. You can't be making online, nonstop phone calls or send nonstop emails. That is a criminal matter. It's outside. It's not a violating the First Amendment because it's about abuse. We were so successful. We had one troll in Southern California near where I live calling our main office, harassing our staff. So we called the local police department. The local police department got in touch with the LA County Sheriff. The LA County Sheriff sends a deputy, and they go to that person. They were able to find out where the person was. And they said, guess what? You keep calling them, we're going to prosecute. LA County. So that's how we deal with it. We're not afraid of anybody. I've been in the midst of trannies, homos, and everything in between. And we've stood our fight. And you know how we win is because we go all in. We go all in saying all of it is bad. We don't tinker around the edges. We don't say, well, it's okay to be gay, just don't push it on the kids. Or, and that's another problem I got. Thanks for letting me segue here. Greater than, you had Katie Faust literally saying to the camera, well, if you're gay, you do whatever you want, just keep it in private. No, that's wrong. We cannot normalize evil anymore because it doesn't stay in the bedroom. Look at Sodom and Gomorrah. Look at Florence, Italy. You look at France right during the French Revolution. This moral collapse never stays behind closed doors. We have to say marriage is a public matter, folks. It's not a private matter. All of you libertarians who think that marriage shouldn't even be a government issue, that is dumb. That is a cop-out. Because the state has an order and a responsibility to protect public order, public health, as well as children. So the state has a say. I'm so sick of that. We got Republicans buying into that. Well, the government shouldn't be involved at all. That is a cop-out. No. That's what mass resistance is. That's who you're dealing with when you reach out to us to deal with this problem. Visit our website. You can contact us through the website. You can contact me directly. We need to fight this. We need to stand for truth, clean out the schools, clean out this perversion entirely.
I can't do any better than that. Fantastic, my friend. Arthur Schaper, again, on Do Not Talk here. Thank you very much for your time, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Charlie.
There you go. You want to get in touch with me, you want to contact me, or you want to schedule to be on the show, or you want to buy some merchandise like my awesome mug right here, my big old 15-ounce mug. Let's talk about politics and religion. Come on. Let's bring it. Don't be scared. You can do it. Put your back into it. Another hat you'll find on my website. Trump was right about everything. And that is at CharLeeSimons.com, CharLeeSimons.com. You can even give there as well if you want to help this ministry continue. Please do. Consider it. Pray about it. CharLeeSimons.com, CharLeeSimons.com. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. But most importantly, America bless God.